Russell and Mark, and I'm working at the intersection of four things. The first is effective altruism, i.e. how can we do good in the world? The second is universal basic income, i.e. how should we allocate the scarce resource of capital? The third is the attention economy, i.e. how can we allocate the scarce resource of time? And the fourth is blockchain, which is a technology to leverage for those previous three things. And today I want to talk about why I'm excited to work on the attention economy, the third one. So first off, talking about what is the attention economy, I think about it as just the concept that human time, that the time that humans have in the world is scarce, and how should we allocate that scarce resource. There's only 24 hours in a day, usually sleeping for 8 of them, and so for those other 16, what is the incentive system for how that attention and where that attention is placed? And I want to talk about essentially a bunch of things today that I am excited to work on in the space. I'm not going to go deep on any of them, but I'm going to talk about them at a high level and to be continued essentially in future talks and podcasts. So the first one is this concept of scarce capital into scarce attention. And what that means is there's a concept pushed by people in the technological unemployment space, in the universal basic income space, and in someone like Albert Wenger at Union Square Ventures with his book The World After Capital, where we think we're going to experience a nonlinear jump from a world up until now, which has been a world where capital was scarce, where factories and money and things of that variety were scarce, and we think that we're going to be transitioning as a result of something like automation into a world where attention or our time is scarce and capital is no longer scarce. And so this is an exciting transition because we haven't experienced these jumps very often. One of the Industrial Revolution was one. The one before that was like the Agricultural Revolution, which was food scarcity into land scarcity. So I think that there's going to be some really interesting work in this space as we find this transition between a world where capital was scarce and a world where attention is scarce. So that's one thing that I'm excited to work on. The second reason why I'm excited to work in this space is because the attention economy is essentially an abstracted or a meta kind of solve for all other projects that one could work on. And what I mean by that is, I was thinking about, do I want to make something in the learning space, some kind of Khan Academy on the blockchain, and the thing though is that when you start to think about Khan Academy on the blockchain or something of that variety, you start to then say, well, shouldn't we just evaluate how people are spending their time generally, not necessarily how are people spending their time in a specific learning application? And so I like that the attention economy essentially is the most abstracted version that says, hey, how do we actually spend our time? Whether it's learning, whether it's fun, whatever it may be on, how do we spend our time in the world? I think that's a big question. The third thing that I'm excited by with this space is kind of defining and excited to talk about is previously thus far, a lot of people in the space have kind of thought of the attention economy as the inputs. And what I mean by that is kind of like what you're consuming. And people talk about things like Google and Facebook and something like, Steemit, and how we are essentially, what do we consume on the internet, and what are the incentives for how we consume and how do we get value for our time and attention. That's something that people talk about a lot, but something that people don't talk about too much in this space is the output of our time. And what I mean by that is kind of the, what are people creating with their time? People in the attention economy are kind of going in between there with the concept of curation and curating the infinite amount of content that's on the internet. But this concept of the output of your time and attention is something that people don't often talk about, and so I'm excited to dive deeper into stuff like the future of work, things on the blockchain like colony.io, and also things like, conceptualizing, okay, if I'm going to be working on something, what should I work on? And you can connect that to some of these like effective altruist cause selection principles around global priorities research or artificial intelligence and things of that variety. So that's something that I'm excited by is thinking about not just the inputs but also the outputs of our time. How do we consume? How do we curate? And how do we create? The fourth thing that I'm excited by is this concept of a new language that we can incentivize through the blockchain. So the idea essentially is that so right now the blockchain is something that is it provides new network effect incentives that allow for financial incentive at the beginning of a new network, and that allows you to essentially break down some of the bigger network effects of something like Facebook, where you say, "Hey, join my new social network," and in the past you would say, "No, you have no one on your social network, and there's no incentive for me to join at the beginning. I'll join later." But now you have an incentive to say, "Oh, I am going to join early because the token to access the utility value of the network will appreciate in value at the beginning, and I, as an early adopter, am actually incentivized to appreciate it in value." So this concept of leveraging blockchain-based network effects to break aggregation theory and old-school network effects is something I'm excited by. People are talking about it a lot in the attention economy space around things like Google and Facebook, and making new network graphs and open network graphs that can break those old network effects. However, something that people don't often talk about is other things in the real world that have big network effects, and something like the English language has a massive network effect right now. And so I'm excited to kind of use blockchain-based crypto economics and incentive structures to incentivize a new language, wherein people have done constructed languages for a while. People have tried things like Esperanto, but there's no essentially advantage to doing those things. And the reason why people tried them was for good reason. I mean, it takes 100 hours to learn Esperanto versus like 1,500 hours for something like German or Russian. And so, and right now we're in we're in a globalized world without a truly fully global language, and one that, and also a language that was, whether it's Chinese or English or whatever, was created a long, long time ago. So when people have tried these constructed languages like Esperanto, they've generally failed. But we may be able to create and incentivize new language creation and really leverage the power of blockchain to get people into it, and also leverage really a digital first language that really uses kind of maybe the three-dimensional capacity of something like a computer to do visual thought. We may be able to kind of, something that people are talking a lot about in the AI world is how can we get AIs to have a meta layer on top of them that allows them to talk to humans about what they're doing, because deep learning is very confusing. So maybe a new language would be able to kind of lessen that gap between something like AIs talking to us about their deep learning, or us talking to AIs through something like Amazon Alexa Echo. So that's the thing I'm excited by. And then the final point on it is something like Neuralink. Elon Musk's new venture is very related to this in terms of, he's very excited by it as a way for us to have less lossy communication. And at the highest level with all of this, it is this concept within the attention economy that our attention is scarce, and so we should make sure that the language of communication that we're using is as essentially efficient as possible, that you can learn it really quickly, that it's really good at communicating your ideas, and I think that we'll have the power to do that with the blockchain. So I'm excited by that. And related point to that, this fifth point, is this concept of scaffolding. I kind of talked about scaffolding there, where right now it takes a long time to scaffold someone like me, an older person, into a new language. But in the future, we may be able to have a language that has an easier scaffold. And this concept of the scaffold is something I think is a little bit missed right now in the attention economy space. People talk a lot about curation. I think curation is only one part of it. Curation kind of misses the aspect of time. And so the scaffold says, hey, it's for a given person who wants to, let's say I now want to learn about blockchain. I am placed on my computer. I want to learn about blockchain, and essentially it would be great if I was fed in a perfect flow scenario like in Guitar Hero or whatever, where it's exactly as challenging as it should be at any given time, where I was essentially scaffolded into learning about blockchain. And that's not what happened for me recently. When learning about blockchain, you got to go on Twitter, and you're going on Medium, and you're reading, you're watching videos, and you're doing all these things you're Googling things and you're going on Reddit, and it's not a personalized scaffold, information scaffold for yourself. So I'm excited by this concept of increasing flow through scaffolds rather than just thinking about non-time delineations through curation markets. The last thing, or the second to last thing that I want to talk about, the sixth thing, is this concept of right now people are talking a lot about the attention economy with respect to text, but I'm excited about it with respect to audio. And so I'm excited, if I'm ever listening to a podcast or doing whatever, I'm going to listen to it at 2 times speed. And right now, we don't have a great way to do a takeaways or a TLDR of audio. Audio, kind of by nature, is it takes up a given amount of time, and you can 2x it to half the time. That's pretty good. But I'm also excited by other ways to kind of curate audio and not just curate text. So essentially, curation markets on audio, not just text, is something I'm excited to do. And then this last thing that I think is also crucial to this is this concept of where one spends their time, clearly, but you have 2 ways to spend your time. One is with people who are with stuff that you naturally want to do, with people who are similar to you, topics you're interested in, things of that variety. And I call these minimum difference or min-diff kind of scenarios. Hey, I want to talk with people on my block, or I want to talk with people who are doing blockchain or in the attention economy or whatever. But we should also make sure that us as a society are also trying to empathize with people that are very different than us, and kind of max diff people. And so in America, you have a classic problem here with something like Republicans and Democrats who don't often interact, and their attention is put on, the classic filter bubble thing and confirmation biases, rather than saying, hey, I'm actively looking to talk with people who are dissimilar to me in America to understand their perspectives, or I'm actively looking to talk with people in rural Kenya so that I can empathize more, so I can understand the leverage of providing them with a universal basic income. So those kinds of questions of how to incentivize our attention for kind of max difference people, I think, is something that I'm interested by as well. So those are kind of 7 things that I'm interested by the space. And also just interested to kind of dive into a lot of the blockchain-based solutions that are currently happening within the space. So these are things like 21.co, Steemit, Brave and their basic attention token, userfeeds.io and the related kind of curation markets by Simon de la Rouvière, Cinero with their AMP token, Yours, which is kind of a medium based on the blockchain, and then also some stuff that's adjacent to this is these new fake news things that are trying to break fake news, like the decentralized news network, or a hyper-related, though not necessarily on the blockchain, but still distributed, Wiki Tribune, which was put out by Jimmy Wales, the creator of Wikipedia. And then finally, I'm excited to talk more about Time Well Spent, which is again, not blockchain-based, but I think could have lots of blockchain overlap. And Time Well Spent is the idea of how can we make sure that we are not just being hooked and addicted to our phones, because that's what someone like Facebook is optimized for, is just our time and attention, and how can we make sure that we spend our time well. So I think the Time Well Spent movement is something that I'm also excited by. So thank you so much for your time. Hope you enjoyed that kind of high-level look at some of the work in the attention economy space that I'm excited to do. And also, if you're thinking about what the call to actions are for yourself, first off, you can work in the attention economy space with any of these various companies that I talked about. You can also work at this kind of higher level in between the attention economy, actual companies that are being started. So there's like a Reddit that I just created, r/the attention economy, which you can join and start to contribute to. And also you can always support me on my Patreon. I'll be talking more about the attention economy and those other 3 things I mentioned earlier: effective altruism, universal basic income, and the blockchain. And I have a self-imposed universal basic income kind of effective altruist cap. So the first $1,000 goes to me, but after that it kind of gets divided between me and effective altruist organizations. So thank you so much again for your time, and excited to dive deeper on other attention economy aspects going forward. Bye.